welcome back to my channel. My name is Ebony Davis. I'm a model, I'm an actor, I'm a poet. I'm someone who loves God and someone who believes in the radical transformative power of self-love. And today I want to talk about a tweet I wrote a while ago that said, "The magic happens when your agenda is in alignment with God's agenda." To me, that tweet was written about surrender, and a lot of people don't really know what it means to surrender to God. A lot of people associate surrendering to God to deprivation. They associate it to being stripped of their own will, not getting what they want out of life. They associate it with guilt. They associate it with shame. They associate it with punishment. And I'm here to dispel all of that, because that's not what it means to surrender. When you surrender to God's will, you're literally surrendering to the highest possible outcome for your life. God knows what you really want, even if you don't know that yourself. God knows what's truly going to make you happy, even if you don't know that yourself. And so many of us don't know that because society has programmed us with ideas of what should make us happy, what should make us fulfilled, what should satisfy us. And yet we don't find ourselves satisfied. We find ourselves going out and buying more. We find ourselves going out and partying more. We find ourselves going out and getting in relationships that don't serve us. We find ourselves going out and seeking better jobs, more money, newer cars, bigger houses, because we don't actually know what's going to make us happy. We don't actually know what's going to satisfy our will, but God knows what's going to satisfy our will. God knows what's truly going to fill up that space deep down on the inside of us that's currently void, that we've been trying to fill with everything in the external without looking within to try to fill it, or looking to God to try to fill it. When you surrender to God's will, God is going to put you in alignment with the very things that are going to come into your life and make you the happiest, that are going to take you to the level you see yourself at, that are going to satisfy your deepest dreams, your deepest desires, those things that you had when you were a kid that you pushed to the side for survival, those things that you had when you were a kid that you pushed to the side because you had to make money, because you were being judged, because your community wouldn't let you follow that path, because your family had scrutiny and things to say about you, because your friends didn't understand the anointing that you had on you. It's about getting back to those things that you knew as a child were going to make you happy. Those things, those dreams, those ideas you had as a child that you knew would satisfy your soul before the world told you who you had to be. Before the world programmed you to believe that accumulating all of these things, accumulating all of these possessions was the key to happiness. That's not the key to happiness. So when you surrender to God's will, you are surrendering to an agenda that allows you to get in alignment with what's actually going to satisfy you. It's not about deprivation. It's the exact opposite. It's about completion. And yes, there is a certain sacrifice that comes with it, because you have to be willing to give up the world. You have to be willing to give up the things that the world told you that you needed. You have to be willing to give up the relationships that don't serve you. You have to be willing to give up the thoughts and beliefs that don't serve you. You have to let go of certain ways of being. You have to surrender certain objects in your environment that are just weighing you down. Certain friendships, certain connections, maybe even a job. But you know what's on the other side of that? Long-term happiness. I heard a saying once that was, Satan shows up in the immediate gratification. But everything in our society points to immediate gratification as the source of happiness. We don't know that the source of happiness is actually foregoing that immediate gratification for something long-term, something long-lasting, something irrevocable, something that can't be taken from you. And so to surrender to God's will is actually to surrender to your will. It's to get what you actually want out of life, to maximize your potential, to expand into the greatest version of yourself. So many people are walking around as small versions of themselves, versions of themselves that don't even scratch the surface of their potential because they're too afraid to step outside of that. Or they become so associated with their trauma and the behaviors that have been informed by their trauma, that they don't know who they would be on the other side of that. And that thought is terrifying to them. And so they stay who they are. They don't grow. They don't expand. They don't shed that layer. They never become the butterfly. They're not willing to say goodbye to certain relationships. They're not willing to say goodbye to their job. They're not willing to say goodbye to their friendships. They're not willing to get up and relocate. They're not willing to take the instruction from God because it feels like it's stripping them of something that belongs to them, but it doesn't inherently belong to them. It belongs to this earth, and it was given to you, and it was borrowed, and it was taken on by you to survive your trauma, and it was taken on by you to get you from point A to point B, and it was taken on by you because it's what you thought you needed, but it wasn't yours. It was never yours. And at a certain point, you have to put it down. At a certain point, you have to be comfortable with letting it go. At a certain point, you have to be able to look in the mirror and say, you know what? I've convinced myself that this was inherently a part of who I am, but that was a lie. That was false. That was fallacy. I have to let it go. This wasn't a part of who I am. This is who I needed to be in order to get through my childhood. This is who I needed to be in order to get through my adolescence. This is who I needed to be in the workplace. This is who I needed to be for my mom. This is who I needed to be for my dad. This is who I needed to be for my community. But this wasn't who I am. And I can let it go. And I can get back to those dreams I had. Or I can talk to God and figure out what dream God has for me. I think it's so important that we realize in our walk with God, in our building our relationship with God, that in the beginning, yes, it's going to feel like so much is being taken from you. It's going to be a lonely road. You're going to look around and see everybody moving different from you, everybody out kicking it, everybody out partying. It looks like they're having a great time, and God got you in the house studying. Or God got you getting ready for your next level. Or God has you in a season of isolation because you don't need to be in a relationship right now because you're still trying to figure out who you are. Because you're still trying to reprogram those beliefs that had you in back-to-back toxicity. And so it's going to feel like everything is being taken from you. But really, it's just stripping away the layers that were added onto you, that don't belong to you, that belong to this earth, that you were programmed with, that made you who you are, that made you attract certain relationships and attract certain situations. But God is trying to get you in alignment. God is trying to get you to your authentic frequency so that you can attract what's really for you, so that the things that are meant for you can really come into your life. Getting into God's alignment is when the magic happens. Getting aligned with God's agenda is when the magic happens. That's when things show up that you did not have to work for. That's when things show up that you did not have to go hustle for, that you didn't go have to seek. You just stood in the vibration of who you are authentically, and it showed up for you because it's also in alignment with that vibration. You attracted it. You magnetized it through your heart, through your mind, through your belief, through your faith. You didn't have to do what the world tells you to go do, which is go hustle, go drain yourself, go break yourself down, and maybe you'll have a little bit of extra money at the end of that to take yourself on vacation. You went within, you did the work, you healed yourself, you sat still, you ate the right foods, you got enough sleep, you cut off toxic relationships, you ended toxic friendships, you put distance between you and the things that no longer serve you. And then suddenly things that do serve you started appearing in your environment. So we can't look at God's will and God's agenda as separate from ours, because God has a greater plan for us than we could ever imagine.